right, everyone, we're now live. You can begin whenever you're ready.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to call this meeting to order. I'll remind everyone to please disclose of any pecuniary interests at the appropriate time. Is Dr. Renaday online so that we can get started with his? Hi, thank you for joining us again today, Dr. Renaday. I'm going to turn the meeting over to you.
Okay, thanks, Counselor. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. So I have a very short update today. So just how we usually structure it in terms of how things are going locally, right? So our update as of yesterday added one additional case. Our update as of today, when it's reported out, there were more than that yesterday. So there'll be a slightly different update at committee PM in terms of the numbers we report today. But again, the general trend is that the cases are low, but highly variable from day to day. So one day we might get one day we might get 5 or 6, some days we get 15 or 20, right? The overall pattern, though, is that the number of cases are going down, and you see the recoveries catching up to that because, right, people are, cases active for around 14 days, depends on what their symptoms are like, etc. And so as cases come down, you see recoveries start to come back and overtake those, right? We have, as of yesterday's update, we were reporting one additional death, which brings us up to 58, and many variants of concern, right? Total 525 over the course of this outbreak have been identified. We should expect to see more on an ongoing basis. The majority of those are the B117 variant that was first identified in the UK. But in general, we should expect to see more of these circulating. We had, as of yesterday's update, 2 institutional outbreaks and 2 workplace outbreaks. Fairly stable, but adding a case here and there to those outbreaks every day. And so they're still actively being worked on. And then I would say when you look at the larger pieces around the health system, it seems that the pressures on the health system are easing. They haven't completely gone away, but they are easing in terms of ICU admissions. Those are stabilized. We're seeing fewer transfers required between hospitals across the province, things like that. So that's an encouraging sign of what probably would be, easily considered a narrowly averted serious issue within the health system in terms of ability to care for people. So those 2 things, I think we've covered, cases and health system. Our health system locally is fine in terms of their capacity, and certainly the number of transfers that they're seeing in are being reduced. So that's good for them in terms of their capacity. In terms of vaccinations, I think there's some good news on that front as well. I would also, my apologies, I just can't remember if we've spoken since the AstraZeneca pause. So I just want to let you know that, of course, AstraZeneca has been paused in terms of first doses, and that's as a result of a change in the perceived risk or the calculated risk of a serious blood clotting event related to that vaccine. Remember, that risk is still incredibly rare, but it dropped from what was considered to be about 1 in 100,000 to about 1 in 60,000, which means that if we were to immunize everyone in our community with the AstraZeneca vaccine, we would expect about 3 at least of those side effects to be noted, right? On the flip side of that, though, the vaccine is incredibly effective at reducing hospitalizations, reducing deaths, right? And so there are active conversations about how that vaccine should be used and what should be the strategy for using that vaccine for second doses of people who had first doses of AstraZeneca. When I have more information on that, I'll share it with you. Locally, in terms of the situation with vaccines, we've delivered over 60,000 doses to date, many of them first doses. We've covered over 50% of the eligible population. Although we're going to have to start changing that reporting fairly soon because now a larger population group is eligible, right? So they've announced that Pfizer, Health Canada has approved the use of Pfizer vaccine only at this time for 12 to 15-year-olds. And so that's an additional expansion to the eligibility. I'm hopeful that that will also be expanded for Moderna, but again, the regulator has to look at information that's submitted and make that decision. And so what you'll see is that locally we've announced that we'll also be taking children of that age in for vaccinations. But at the present time, we're requesting that they only come to Point Edward because we can guarantee that they get the right the vaccine that they're eligible to receive at that site, but we can't necessarily guarantee it at the other sites. So we're working on a plan to figure out how we might be able to do that. But for now, just for the interim, in order to get those people immunized with their families, we're asking that if you're booking for somebody 12 to 15, that they and whoever's coming with them should come to Point Edward for now. So what else? Over the next few weeks, our vaccine supply is stable, but we're expecting some bumps up in June. And so we'll be able to ramp up the capacity that we have in order to deliver those vaccines, largely Pfizer. It seems to be what's coming in, and the Moderna supply is sort of up and down. AstraZeneca, as you know, is paused, and then the Janssen is sort of, we don't really have any sightlines on when we would get that vaccine. Okay, vaccines, hospital system, cases and outbreaks. I think we've covered it, so I'll leave it there.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Renaday. I'd like to open it up for questions. Does anyone have any questions for Dr. Renaday today?
Just, if I may, Dr. Renaday, the AstraZeneca, there is talk of there's some vaccines that may expire through this process. Is there any talk of making those available for second shots for those people that are quite willing to take the second shot of the AstraZeneca before they expire? And it seems to be a concern that we're short of vaccines and some may expire on us. And I know that's the province that should be dealing with that, but there's been any talk of it.
So, Councillor, can I just ask for clarification? Do you mean vaccine that Ontario already has, or vaccine that we're expected to get?
I think that we already have that may expire before we open them up again.
Okay, so what I'm aware of is that there's a I say small, it's large for us, but it's small for the province, right? About 50,000 doses, I think, of vaccine that they're holding on to while they make this decision. But I think they're very aware of when that vaccine would expire and what the timelines that they would need to have to make those decisions are. Recognize that 50,000 doses is nowhere near the amount that's required to give second doses to all the people who did get AstraZeneca in the province. And so they're still waiting to see could they get other doses from the stock that they're expecting to get in order to enable people to get second doses with the same vaccine, should that be the determination. But again, not our determination or my determination.
Thank you.
Any other, Mayor Bradley?
Yes, Doctor, the same question I asked you yesterday. I think it's good that this group knows the answer and the public does. And that is that question of vaccine availability in Michigan and in Port Huron specifically. And we're aware of media stories where in Windsor, there's an effort to get vaccine from Detroit. And I asked you the question yesterday and you gave a most satisfactory response about the challenges. So I wonder if you could just put that on the record today for us.
Sure, yeah, Councillor. So let me just go back and outline the issue a little bit. So there's the idea that there are vaccines just across the border that might either be not used because people are not taking those doses or because they might be about to expire. And what should be done with those vaccines and whether, so two strategies have been proposed. There are people who've proposed the idea of getting people, moving them across the border, getting their vaccines and coming back. I would say that process is, to me, fraught with logistical complexity in terms of you really don't want to congregate people in order to get them the vaccine because you might put them at risk of exposing each other to COVID, right? The other piece that it's fraught with in terms of logistical complexity is the issue around the border and would they be let through and would they be, what would happen when they came back? So, that's one piece. I would say that's probably a less ideal way of doing it than to try to figure out how to get that vaccine from there over to here and then give the vaccine through the delivery channels that we have so that people don't have to actually cross the border. The mechanism for doing that is sort of also technically challenging, right? There are regulatory issues between Health Canada and the FDA that need to be worked out, as well as logistic issues in terms of the chain of custody. So given the magnitude of the vaccine doses that I've been hearing are over there, it might make sense to investigate some of that, but I think Windsor's already doing it. And so I think the idea is if they can work out a process that works, then we take that process and see if we can apply it here, because I don't think that the volume of doses that we'd be talking about over there would be similar in any way, right? So I think let's see if they can work out a process that actually enables transfer of vaccine through the appropriate legal framework and also through the appropriate logistical framework that ensures that it will still be safe and effective when it gets here. And then we can have that discussion pending whatever happens over there.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Dr. Renaday? Councillor Hand.
There's a lot of questions in the community, seeing it on Facebook, and I've had someone approach me. It's about the second doses, the people that got them early on outside of the system, that they're wondering when they're going to get contacted. I know we talked about it yesterday, but I'm not talking about firemen and first responders. It's people in the general public that got an early vaccine that want to know, and I just said you'll be contacted soon to book. But is that being communicated more broadly?
Yes, Councillor, in terms of the second doses, when we issue media releases, we try to talk about those second doses and hope that gets picked up, and we also put it on our site. So here's the principle around second doses, and then I'm going to outline one exception, maybe two exceptions. The principle is if you were first in line to get a first dose, that means that you're going to be due for your second dose earlier than other people who got their first dose later. So we know when those second doses are coming up, and apart from people who have been added to the current eligibility to book their second doses, we have a sense of how those are going to go, right? It's going to be 90 plus, then 80 plus, et cetera. And we're going to call those people in to book their appointments based on the contact information that we have for them. So that's one piece. Recognize also that we've also been, there's more scientific evidence to support the idea that getting first doses into the population is actually tremendously valuable compared to circling back and giving second doses. And also some additional information that shows us that these vaccines work in similar ways to other vaccines, which is that once you protect the minimum interval of time between first and second dose, when you stretch that dose out, it doesn't offer you less protection if it's later, right? And in some cases, it may offer better protection. So that's an ongoing kind of area of inquiry. The exceptions I need to mention to you are as follows. If you didn't get your vaccine here but got it somewhere else in Ontario, right, we would know that that's coming up, but because we didn't give it, we're not sure that we may not be including you in the counts for second doses because we didn't give them. That's not a high proportion of people, but the second piece is if you got your vaccine through a pharmacy, all of those pharmacies had their own booking mechanisms. They had their own, a second dose may not have been booked for you, those kinds of things. And so one, if you got it through a pharmacy, it's AstraZeneca, and we're still figuring out what's going to be the process for second doses for AstraZeneca. But two, once we decide that, we may need to ask people to contact us directly, because although their dose would have been recorded in the system, we may not have a read on who those people are. So if we can do that without asking people and just contact them, we'll do it. But if we need to contact people, we'll contact them. Sorry, that was a long answer.
No, I appreciate
there's a lot of technical complexity around the second
Thank
doses.
you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Napper.
Yeah, I just want to relate to people out there. You got to be patient in this. Like, a lot of us aren't very patient. But I was lucky enough to get a call yesterday, and I was on there, and there was 4 vacancies for the time slot I wanted. The time I got my form filled out, they were gone. That's how quick they're going. So it is moving, and I certainly appreciate that.
And I know the Point Edward Clinic did open up on Saturday to extend those extra doses. And I believe last Friday they did as well. So they're doing the best they can with trying to get everybody in. And I applaud. Again, we hear nothing but good things about your clinics, Dr. Renaday. We really appreciate everything that you and your staff are doing to keep those vaccines flowing.
That's very kind, yeah. Can I make one comment just to prep you all for the expectations around second doses? Is that so? right now, the key is to make progress on first doses while starting the process of second doses, not to just shift gears entirely and go to second doses. So you're going to see second doses creep up, but they're going to creep up slowly, just the way our initial vaccine creeped up slowly, right? Because we're still trying to get a lot of first doses in and start the process of second doses. There's going to be some place where I do this a lot, but there's going to be some place where the first doses sort of plateau, right? And then you're going to start seeing the second doses rise in proportion, and then we're going to integrate those two things together. Right now, we're keeping them a little bit separate. We're going to integrate them as there become more and more second doses to do.
Okay. If there's no other questions, then we're going to let Dr. Renaday get on with his day. I'm sure you have a busy one. As always, thank you very much for your time this morning, and we'll let you go.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Council, we are going to go to number 4 on our agenda, the Infrastructure and Development Services Division. We have some correspondence here to receive and file. I need a motion to get that. Thank you, Councillor Veens and Councillor Weber. Are you guys wanting to bring those all 3 together?
I'm good with that.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody want to speak to any of those? Councillor Weber.
Item 2 from St. Clair Township. They're asking for, I think that would go to Mr. Cole for a report, and the ministry as well. So possibly that could be asked for a follow-up report on illumination.
Okay, thank you. I didn't notice that there was a resolution attached to that. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. So you're requesting, is the mover okay with requesting a report from the county?
Yep.
Any questions or comments on that?
Maybe Mr. Cole could give us a little background on that, just what should be happening here.
Thank you.
Briefly, thanks.
Sure. Thank you, Councillor, and Chair Rombouts. Maybe I'll ask Matt Deline to come on because he's familiar with this request and has been dealing with it.
Yes, thank you. Matt, do you have a moment to discuss this?
I do. Through the chair, we have received this request previously, and the intersection's under the jurisdiction of the province. And our correspondence back to the township and to the ministry was that it's the ministry's, I guess, intersection to determine what needs to be done there. We've had correspondence back and forth with the ministry. I'm sure St. Clair's correspondence now has gone to them again to get their response. We will talk to the province again on the illumination request, but we're fairly confident their answer will be the same as it has been in the past, is that it's not warranted. So we can proceed with a report with such information, or we can just follow up with St. Clair Township with the ministry's response.
Councillor Weber.
Yes, so maybe that was enough of a report. If that's just that it's being looked at, and it is a provincial, I guess if there's any help that the county can have to make it a safer intersection, that would be all that I would ask. So I will kind of withdraw that we need a further report.
So is council okay with just receiving and filing that? Or did you want to endorse the motion from the township?
Okay, so made the motion.
Maybe we better separate things.
Made the motion earlier to receive and file, and I think that's just what we need to do.
Okay, what do you think, Councillor Weber?
I'm okay with that. I think staff's aware of this, and that's what need to be.
Okay. All in favor of that? That is carried. Thank you. And we'll go down to information reports. The first one is regarding the building services first quarter statistics. We need a motion to receive and file that. Councillor Miller, seconded by Warden Marriott. Thank you. Any questions or comments on that report? All in favor of receiving and filing that? That is carried. There's an information report for the first quarter statistics and approval authority activity. We need a motion to receive and file that report. Moved by Councillor Napper, seconded by Councillor Veens. Questions or comments on that report? That is carried. We have an information report regarding work in progress. We need a mover and a seconder to receive and file that report. Moved by Councillor Weber, seconded by Councillor Hand. Any questions or comments on that report? All in favor? That is carried. And then the information reports regarding upcoming 2021 Public Works conferences. We need a mover and a seconder to receive and file that. Councillor Veens and Councillor Weber, questions or comments on that? All in favor? That is carried. And we have under reports requiring a motion, the report regarding the Woodlot Conservation Bylaw compensation in lieu update. Need a mover and a seconder for that recommendation. Moved by Warden Marriott, seconded by Councillor Hand. Questions or comments on that report? Councillor Napper.
Not particularly on that report, but wasn't there 2 reports back you just carried it, we never voted on? I'm not sure.
I believe we covered all of the reports to be received and filed, but maybe staff can correct me on that.
Item B, Chair. We had a mover and a seconder, but we didn't all vote.
Oh, thank you. Sorry about that. All in favor? That is carried. Apologize for that. Is that what you were talking about, Councillor Napper? Okay, thank you. So we'll go back to CA. Questions or comments on that report? I have a question, Mr. Cole. I'm just wondering, considering that we are trying to save up for purchases of future land for this, is the recommended amount enough to do that satisfactory? How long will it take to purchase an acre of land, given that acreage is now up to about 20,000 an acre?
Sure. So, Chair Ombouts, what has happened there is in this report then is the compensation has been increased by $2,000, so from 3 to 5. That additional $2,000 accommodates the ability for us to purchase land in the future. Right now, when we get compensation for land replanting, it's traditionally been done either on county lands or on willing land partners and private landowners. And I think it's reasonable. We have planted all of our county lands available. I think it's reasonable to assume that at some point we are not going to have those land partners available, whether just by happenstance or because willing partners become few and far between. So the $2,000, if you think about the current land value of $17,000 an acre, $15,000 to $20,000 an acre. Maybe once every, we'll probably be able to buy an acre every 10 years under that additional purchase, maybe a little less.
And how many acres will be removed in order to buy 1 acre?
So then we would be removing like 20 acres to purchase an acre.
Warren Marriott, did you want to speak to?
Yeah, I was just going to add, it's not like you have to buy prime agricultural land to plant trees. There's lots of very marginal land that sells a lot cheaper than that. And then there's people that actually volunteer land nothing. So I think it's reasonable at 5,000 myself. Just because we wouldn't be going out and buying prime agricultural land to plant trees anyway. Just a comment.
Thank you for that. As far as a deterrent is concerned, personally, I don't think it's really much of a deterrent when you're a landowner and you have 10 acres of bush and you go, okay, well, it will cost me $5,000 an acre, which is about $50,000 an acre, or for the total amount. And then it might cost me some to remove the bush and to add some drainage. So even if it costs $10,000, you're still gaining about $7,000 per acre. So we are, I don't know about the rest of you, but here in Warwick Township, we're seeing a lot of our woodlands disappear because of that, because the price of land has gone up so much. So I personally would like to see it higher, but Ward and Marriott.
I'm interested in that comment, Chair Romboats, because if there's that many acres being removed, it's got to be done illegally, because I think the county is processing all of the applications as they go. So raising it won't deter those doing it illegally. That's a different area. We need maybe more enforcement. If you're seeing that many acres being removed, our applications, we've only had 2 applications in the last how many months. So that's a separate issue in my mind.
True. So maybe we need to look at that as well, at the removal. Okay, so if everybody's happy with this, if there's any other comments, all in favor of the recommendation? That is carried. Thank you. Since there's no other business, we're going to, or is there any other business to be brought forward? Seeing none, we'll move on to Public Health Services Division. There's correspondence to be received and filed here. We need a motion to receive and file that correspondence. Moved by Councillor Weber, seconded by Councillor Veen. Any questions or comments on that? All in favor of receiving and filing that? Thank you. That's carried. There's an information report here on the COVID-19 activities within the county. We need a mover and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Miller and Councillor Napper. Questions or comments on that information report? All in favor of receiving and filing that report? Thank you. That's carried. Any other business for this division? Seeing none, we're going to move on to Cultural Services Division. There's correspondence to receive and file there. Moved by Councillor Veens, seconded by Ward and Marriott. Questions or comments on that? All in favor of receiving and filing that? Thank you. Go on to information reports. The first one is regarding the first quarter 2021 statistics. We need a mover and a seconder to receive and file that report. Moved by Councillor Veen, seconded by Councillor Weber. All in favor? That is carried. There's an information report regarding the Oil Museum of Canada renovations. Need a mover and a seconder to receive and file that report. Thank you, Councillor Hand and Councillor Miller. Questions or comments on that report? All in favor? That is carried. And an information report regarding library's first quarter 2021 statistics. Need a mover and a seconder to receive and file that. Thank you, Councillor Hand and Councillor Veen. Questions or comments on that? Councillor Bradley and then Councillor Hand. Councillor Bradley, did you have a comment? You're muted.
referring to the motion on the ancestral lands, or are you still dealing with the information reports?
Still dealing with the information reports.
Okay. It might be easier in the future. We just did them as a group.
We can do that as well. Councillor Hand, did you have a comment about the library's report?
It's just the same. It's an ongoing comment that I'm impressed by the activity that's still going on, regardless of the restrictions, and they're keeping the interest there. And I see people coming and going from the Point Edward Library constantly doing the pickup. So good job.
Great. And even the online is fantastic. To be able to download books right online is great. I use that all the time. So we appreciate that side of it as well. All right. All in favor of receiving and filing that report? That is carried. Thank you. We have 3 reports requiring a motion. The first is regarding the acknowledgement of ancestral lands. Moved by Councillor Bradley, seconded by Councillor Hand. Councillor Bradley, did you have a comment about that?
I just have a question to administration. We'd had discussion a year or two ago about opening the county council meetings with the land declaration. Where is that? What's the status of that at this point?
Yes, Mr. Meyer, do you want to comment on that?
I could certainly add additional detail. I believe Ron has
thank you.
So I'll defer to Ron first, if I can.
Thank you. Mr. Van Horn.
Yes, we took that debate or discussion, I should say, and we worked with staff. Andrew took the lead on it, and this is partially as a result of that discussion of the development of the statement that we've got here. There's no reason why we couldn't start every council meeting with the statement. Some do, others just do it at the start of their council season, like of their 4-year term. So we can do it either way, whatever council would like. It's up to council. We're also, as it's noted in the report, it's going to be published and put in our public buildings as well, and in a prominent place, so people are aware of the recognition, the issues of the recognition there as well.
Okay, thank you. It seems to me there's only 10, 12 council meetings that would make sense to do it in front of the council meetings. We don't do it for special meetings or any other meetings. It's just for the actual gathering of the council. I'll throw this out there. I was unsuccessful at city council. I wanted it to be read on a rotating basis by the councillors instead of the chair on a continual basis. And I don't know if county council would be open to that. But I have to say, when one person said they didn't want to read it, then it came back to me as chair to read it. And if there was anyone that didn't want to read it, then it should just go to the warden. But it's very important, and just close by saying this. One thing that's really important if we adopt this to be read, that it has to be sincere. It has to be deep commitment to read it and the words to be powerful, because it can't be just treated like calling for a conflict of interest declaration or some of the other things we call for. And I've tried to keep that in my own mind when I'm reading it. It's about the power of the message and how important it is that it be sincere.
Okay, so Councillor Bradley, are you recommending that we read the acknowledgement at the beginning of each council meeting and that we rotate within the councillors on council?
I'm going to propose that we do read it. It is read at the beginning of each meeting. It is awkward if some people don't want to read it. I guess you could bypass those people. But I do think it has more value, and this is not disrespectful to the warden, because I wanted it at city council that each one of us would read it if we wish to. So I'm going to propose that it be read at the beginning of each council meeting on a rotating basis. And if someone declines to read it, and I have to be fair, I think the problem in the city was it also at the wrap-up part of it, and we endorsed the UN declaration on the UNDRIP recommendations. And I think that was the problem with the one individual. So I'm just going to propose that we read at the beginning of each meeting, starting with the warden at the next meeting, and it'd be on a rotating basis after that.
And is the seconder okay with that?
Yeah. So me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like the idea of the rotation.
Okay. Is there any other questions or comments about this before I call the vote? Councillor Napper.
Yeah, I was just curious, how many councils read it now at their meetings within the municipality or within the county? Like, it's something we've never done, but it's certainly something I think should be done, you know.
I don't know.
I don't know what the actual statistics are. I know it's not something that our council has done in the past, so, but it's interesting and something that can be considered for sure by each individual council. Councillor Bradley?
Yeah, I think it's important, Mayor Napper, if individual communities want to do it. And for example, the declaration I read at the police board, based on recommendations from First Nations police officers, is radically different from the one I read at City Council. And if a community wants to do it, I think perhaps working through the county and David Plain, that you should do it based on your own history. And instead of just taking a cookie cutter declaration, you can make it really part of what your community is all about.
Okay, any other questions or comments on that? Councillor Weber.
Yeah, we have had a short discussion, I guess, at our council about that, reading that. And I appreciate all the work that our cultural services has gone to put this together and do the consultation to make sure that what we say is proper and clear. So I guess I would say we would look at something like this and possibly go forward with our local council. But I agree with doing this at the county, at the higher level of government for the councillors.
Mr. Van Horn, did you have a comment?
Yes, just to come back to Mayor or Councillor Bradley's comments. Ours started off narrow and was fairly similar to what the city had, but the city's geographic area is really covered primarily by one treaty, whereas the county itself has at least 3 treaties. That's why it's broader. So if councillors like Lambton Shores, if councils want to narrow it down to their own, they can simply modify the wording that we've got in the statement, because it's very broad to cover the entire county and all the groups in the county.
Okay, good discussion. Any other questions or comments? All in favor of adopting that motion then? That is carried. We'll go on to the report regarding collections management and donations report. You need a motion, or there's a recommendation there. Do we have a mover and a seconder for that recommendation? Councillor Veens and Councillor Weber. Questions or comments on that? All in favor of that? That is carried. And lastly, we have a report regarding library donations with a recommendation attached to that as well. Moved by Councillor Veen, seconded by Councillor Napper. Thank you. Questions or comments on that? All in favor? That is carried. Is there any other business today? And we have no in-cameras. Oh, Councillor Weber.
Just a comment and through to, I guess it deals with the museum, and it's unfortunate that we can't have our Paint Ontario, which is the premier exhibit and a premier event held at the museum. And appreciate, I've heard that staff's going to help with promoting that, as it's been deferred and delayed, and commend them for the work that they're going to do on this, and we need to work together to make this very successful come, I believe, September, when we do hold the Paint Ontario. So kudos to staff for working hard with the volunteer group that does a lot of work with this. So thank you.
So are we looking at that being an online event, Mr. Meyer, or what is the plan for that?
Thanks for the question, and thanks for the kind comments. I'll certainly pass those on to staff. The intent at this time is to host Paint Ontario in September, similar to how we did last year, which was by scheduled appointment. So people can register for an appointment online or call the museum and book a time slot. And that allows us to control the traffic flow and the volumes and the capacity within the space. But it would be very similar to what people would experience in a typical Paint Ontario. They would be able to flow through the space safely and book their time so that we could keep numbers down within the museum. So it will be in person. I'm assuming we'll be at a point come September when we host this that those in-person visits to the museum will be permitted again as they were last September. So that's our goal, and we're working closely with the Grand Bend Arts Center and the volunteers to make it very successful. It's their 25th anniversary this year, so there's some impetus to certainly raise the bar and get the community back to the show.
Wow, that will be lovely. I don't think I've ever looked forward to a public event so much as I do right now. So it'll be great to be able to get back to those events. Anything else today, Council? We need a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Veens and seconded by Councillor Hand. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you all. Have a good morning. We'll see you soon.
You too.
Take care.